Alright guys, this is going to be the first of 5 short videos. This one's probably going to end up being the longest one because I have technical jargon I'm going to cover. This one's going to be boring, but there are important pieces of information in here, especially if you are brand new to FPV or you have never looked at anything. So bear with me for a minute. If you want, you can skip on to the next video once I get that one posted. I'm going to leave a couple of notes in the bottom. The first thing is you're going to fall into one of two categories. You're either going to be a ham radio operator already or looking to get your ham radio license, or you're not. It's not necessary. If you have your ham radio license, you can transmit above 25 milliwatts on your FPV gear, and you have a lot of frequencies to pick from. If you do not have your ham radio license, you are stuck with either FCC type accepted stuff, which I believe DJI has, or you have to find a transmitter that's 25 milliwatt or lower. With that in mind, keep in mind, you have your club rules. Please look at your club rules for FPV. Take a look at your club associate organization rules. For us in the United States, most of us are AMA associated fields, so we have the AMA rules to follow. And then over in Europe and Asia, I don't know what you guys have, but you need to take a look at those rules and regulations, and you also need to look at your frequency allocation. Most of us are going to be trying to use 5.8 gigahertz. If you have your ham radio license, you can always go get it. If you don't, it's very easy to get. But if you have your ham radio license, you are not stuck on 5.8 gigahertz. You have 1.2, you have 900 megahertz, you have several other bands to pick from. Most of us are going to be on 5.8 gigahertz because that is what is out there in mass. So that's what we're going to be looking at. With that in mind, club rules, local, state, federal rules, keep your eye on those. Don't look at doing high performance airplanes for your first one. Not a smart idea. Use something that's an easy flyer, something you're used to flying, not over the top, because it's going to be disorienting the first couple of times you fly in the headset. The same thing as you check your ailerons, elevator, rudder, throttle, gear retracts, check your video equipment. Just the same, all the connections are connected. Do your field check, take the walk for 50 yards or 100 yards or whatever. Make sure you still have video reception. Go through all that stuff. It's going to save you some heartache. We're going to take a look at your basic setup. Your most rudiment FPV is going to be your camera, your transmitter, and your receiver. You have more elaborate setups. That is a camera, transmitter, flight controller with OSD, which is on-screen display, gives you stuff like altitude, heading, a bunch of other information, battery level, stuff like that. Let's move into the shop and cover over the gear, okay? So your very basic setup is going to be a camera, a transmitter, and a receiver. And this kit I picked up on Amazon for I think 30 bucks. You can get them for a little bit cheaper. This is actually, the transmitter and the camera are separate. You can get them with the transmitter directly on the back of the camera, which is great. It works out pretty well. Pull that cable out. Here's my instruction manual. So the heart of everything, I guess, is your transmitter. This is a little 600 milliwatt. It's 40 channels. It's all the normal channels, and then if you flip it over, you can see the display. It's got a couple of buttons there to change the channels. So you'll notice there's no antenna attached to it. There's, of course, no FCC sticker on this. Never will be. But this is your basic transmitter. This plugs in with, let's open that. So I haven't opened this kit before. You've got a small camera. This one's a little bit different than the other ones that I have. And it plugs in through the cable. This cable goes here. This cable goes to the camera. And then they plug in through that typical Futaba jack right there. Your battery goes here. So you would put this camera somewhere on your plane. Put the transmitter somewhere on there. Put an antenna on it. There was an antenna in this box. I pulled it out. I have it here somewhere. And that's it. And then you'll have your receiver headset, which we'll get into in a minute. So this is pretty basic. This is only 600 milliwatt, but you can turn it down to 25 milliwatt. This is I just picked this up. This is a high power output. So this is 2.5 watts, which offers a huge amount of power for staying line of sight. And it's got a vertical antenna. And so this transmitter is quite a bit different. All of your connections are, there's your buttons for your channels. It's got LEDs on it. So there's a wiring sheet with it somewhere that will explain how these get plugged in. And that just gives you more power. So we'll put that one away for right now. This can go back in the bag. Now, if you don't want to do FPV and you just want to do video, there is another solution. You can get the camera separate, and you can get one of these little, like a Run Cam or some of the other brands. It just happens to be Run Cam. Mini FPV DVR. And this just plugs in line to the camera and works kind of like a VCR. It just records the video, and then you can pop the memory card out. So that's another option. If you're just looking to shoot a little bit of video, you can do it that way without even needing the FPV setup. Okay, before we get any further, I want to cover two real quick topics, just talking about the camera itself. So you're going to see a couple of terms on different cameras. You're going to see TVL, and you're going to see NTSC/PAL. The first term, TVL, usually is followed by a number. TVL in a brief term equates to resolution or quality of the video. The higher the TVL, the better the image quality you may get from the camera. I say may because if the lens, electronics, or post-processing is low quality, this usually results in a lower quality video. Try to stick with cameras with a higher TVL rating. Minimum rating I would suggest is around TVL 700 or TVL 800. NTSC and PAL is a National Television System Committee and phase alternating lines. These are analog television encoding systems. They were developed a long time ago. You're going to see them on a lot of analog cameras. North America and Japan and some other countries utilize the NTSC encoding for analog video. Europe primarily uses PAL because it's at 50 hertz. It's just meaning that it has a standard encoding in it. Okay, so your receivers, your headset. I have two right here. This one I picked up used. It's a Fat Shark Dominator. It has a gyro in it, so you can do head tracking, which is great. You have to have the cable for it. You have to know how to plug it in. A little bit of programming. These are great, but this will work just as a standard FPV set. Just pop it over like a pair of goggles. It has one receiver antenna on it, which it's in the bag right there. And this requires an external pack. Then I have my El Cheapo from Amazon. This is another FPV headset, but this one actually has a cool thing, and it's turned on right now, so I must have bumped the power button. So you can kind of see in there, but let me turn that off. This has two antennas on it. Some have two, some have four, some only have one, like the Fat Shark. And I have a couple of antennas over here. This one can change through the channels just the same as all the other headsets, but I have an SD card in here and I can record my video, and this is actually how I've been recording some of my video. And of course I'm working with analog. Digital is great also, so analog's a little lower quality. I'm moving to digital, but I don't have anything digital to show you right now. For that, some of your cameras have it, but they're usually pretty limited information. You have various flight controllers, like the Maytech Sys. This is a F405 Wing V2. I've yet to fly this one. Or the Speedy Bee. And this is what I use, but there is, as you can tell, a little bit of work to be done. You do have to solder all your servo pads. All of that has to go through the flight controller. You have all the stuff down here. There's a bunch of cables that go through it. You have LED, Wi-Fi control, and then you also have your BEC. So this takes care of everything, and then your ESC goes off of this, and it can read how much draw you're taking off of your battery, your voltage, everything else. This takes a little bit of time and patience. I use iNav, which is perfect. They have a wing version of iNav. They're up to version 9, I think, now. Then you get this fancy, 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 scratching your head and squinting your eyes, how to set up the Speedy Bee. These are not easy, but they are great. If you have the patience to do it on your first one, that's perfect. But your first FPV, I really don't recommend doing a flight controller. I did not do a flight controller on my first FPV. Okay, I'm going to try and do this with the camera over top of my shoulder at the moment. I want to cover one important theory. I'm going to try not to dive too far into the theory this, theory that, but your transmitter and receiver use RF, radio frequencies, to send the signal back and forth. So this is going to be something that you're going to want to know ahead of time prior to your setup. A lot of your generic FPV cameras that are analog come with this. This is essentially a vertical antenna. You can get some occasionally with a circular polarization antenna. That's what this is as well. Most of the time, this is what you're getting. For wings, this is not a bad thing. You can use these, but you have to keep in mind how they function. So some of this is probably going to make some sense, because if you have a diversity receiver, you know you have two antennas on a normal RC airplane receiver. You usually have one straight up and down and one on its side. And this will kind of explain a little bit of that, but this also plays effect for your video as well. The top diagram is basically the radiation pattern of a vertically polarized antenna. You'll notice it almost looks like a donut. Essentially it is. So your radiation, your signal that is coming out of your antenna is coming to the side, and it's coming out sort of like a donut, and it continues to grow. But you'll notice there's nothing on the top and the bottom. So over top of the antenna and below the antenna, there's nothing really radiating for signal-wise. So this is important to remember. So you have your horizontal polarization, your vertical polarization. We'll go with vertical first. So if your antenna is, as this image is, straight up and down, the signal comes off like this, in that donut shape in all directions, or omnidirectional, as they say. No signal on the top and the bottom, but everything around it basically has that radiation. So it comes off like this. And normally, you want to match that with your receiving antenna at the same polarization, so that it gets that whole signal, or as much of that signal as it possibly can, to get all the information it's getting. Now, if one of your antennas should be horizontally polarized, you would want the other antenna also horizontally polarized, because when you look at the horizontal polarization, you'll realize it comes off this way, so it's almost like flat. If you have the antennas in opposite configurations, horizontal and vertical, you get what is referred to as cross-polarization desensitized. You lose 20 dB of signal. 20 dB of signal is almost all of it. So that's not what you want. So you want to match the two of these. With our diversity receivers, we set one like this and one like this. So when the aircraft goes into a bank, you know, we get one that's in the correct polarization for our transmitter. You usually only have one transmitting antenna with FPV. So if you stay with the generic, basically dipole type antennas, and you can do that with FPV on airplanes, not necessarily recommended. You need to have them in the same orientation. If you decide that the airplane is going to have it laid down like this, your receiver needs to be the reciprocal. When your plane gets into a bank, your signal will weaken. So there's a way to solve this. On drones, They are constantly moving. They could be pitched forward, they could be pitched backwards, they can be inverted. They are constantly moving. Airplanes are usually fairly level, so you're not going to see that. However, what drone flyers are doing is using something called a circular polarized antenna to get rid of some of the signal loss that you end up with. So using a circular polarized antenna helps increase the reception. So these are horizontal, vertical polarization, and this is basically, if it was horizontally polarized, you turn that donut on the side. So that's what your radiation pattern comes with. And you have a fallacy there because, as I said, there's no real signal coming to the top, no real signal coming to the bottom. So if these are both horizontal, when you come into this point where the antennas are pointing directly at each other, you will lose signal. Circular polarized antennas solve some of that, not all of that. Circular polarized antennas do exactly what they say. There's two types. You have right-hand circular polarization and left-hand circular polarization. If you choose circular polarized antennas, they should match. Your receiver should have a right-hand circular polarized antenna if your transmitter has a right hand. If your transmitter has a left hand, you should have a left hand on the receiver. They are marked. I have one around here somewhere. This is right hand, I know that. This is right hand as well. What this does is, instead of having that flat plane of that signal, this is essentially what that radiation coming outward looks like. It literally spins. So you don't lose as much signal. So this helps counter some of the turning. Now your radiation pattern, if you look, it looks like you've got kind of a donut that's pretty distorted. But essentially your radiation pattern is still the same thing. To the top, there is not much signal. To the bottom, there is not much signal. Your signal is coming out of the side. Now the inside of one of these is a clover leaf. See if I can get this off. And what a cloverleaf antenna does is creates that circular polarization. So you can see it looks pretty strange. And I don't want to get into the whole theory of how the cloverleaf works, but this is creating a circular polarized signal coming out. And it's omnidirectional, so it's coming out off of all sides. And so if the plane is directly above you, and that's the plane and that's the, then you're probably not going to get any reception. But if it's sitting here or here or here or here, you're going to get that receive. And it's not going to be as lossy as if you had cross polarization, because you still get the signal. So these help negate some of the signal loss. They don't completely eliminate it, but they make it easier. For drones, these are the ideal choice. Keep in mind, if your transmitter is on right-hand circular, your receiver needs to be on right-hand circular. Left-hand circular on the transmitter, left-hand circular on the receiver. If you get into the ham radio aspect, you're going to understand it. With the low-power transmitters, these are ideal. You can get away with your vertical polarized antennas, and I've used these, and they've actually worked out really well. But if you know you're going to be doing a whole bunch of yanking and banking, go with the circular polarization. Most of your kits with the transmitter are going to come with basically this. So you can choose as you like. That is going to wrap up the first video. It's been fairly a lot of information. Hopefully it's helpful and it's not useless. It'll get you moving. You'll understand how some of this stuff works. Now we can start getting into the nitty-gritty of setting stuff up, testing it, making sure it works, and getting into our first flights. Thanks for being patient, guys.